Well, in the meantime, whenever that election is held, you've still got potentially years of this government, this zombie government, as you describe it, that from where I sit seems to really not like the people or the country that it is governing. Now, I've been shocked to see all of these displays of English flags, which you would think be normally wonderful displays of patriotism. But apparently, according to GB News, the Home Office has decided to set up a hate crimes unit because apparently displays of English flags set up a narrative challenge. What is this narrative that that the flags, the good old St. George Cross, might be challenging there?
Well, once again, patriotism has been conflated with far-right activism. Now, I understand the St. George's flag in the past, years ago, was associated with some far-right activism, but we're now in 2025. And I think if you're an ethnic minority or anyone who looks at the St. George's flag or the Union Jack and feels intimidated or threatened by it, I would argue that it's more likely that you're not integrated or you don't actually value this country. I personally, whenever I see a St. George's flag or Union Jack, I feel elated. I feel a sense of pride. Now, in 2025, we live in a situation where London is minority white, 35% white, as are towns and cities like Birmingham, Luton, Leicester, and so on. We have the white working class girls who have been denied justice because of stoking community tensions when it comes to the grooming gang scandals. We have state-sponsored DEI, which is anti-white racism sponsored by the state. You know, we even have things like the government legislating it in court and fighting in court against local citizens to keep migrant hotels opened, arguing that migrants actually have more rights than the local citizens. And so when you have that kind of situation in 2025, how can you conclude that this country is racist or that there is a risk of far-right activism? You can't conclude that. So what we're really seeing is this, what we call Operation Raise the Colours, is what this has been officially termed, is the oppressed majority rallying against multicultural dogma and an establishment that will not listen.
Rita. And talking about that establishment, we had the disgraceful scenes of a comedy writer, incredible comedy writer, Graham Linehan, being arrested. I mean, for things he said, posted online when he was in America. He's not even a British citizen. And I just wonder, does that put all of us in danger? If we've said things like, there's only two genders, that men can't have babies, that men have absolutely no right to be in women's spaces. Whatever it is that is offensive to this activist class that seems to have infiltrated the British police force, are we going to get arrested as soon as we touch down at Heathrow?
Well, the answer is, I don't know. And that's part of the problem. We don't know what we're allowed to say. So everyone is in some way kind of self-censoring and looking over their shoulder about what's going to happen in some state of paranoia. We've had Lucy Connolly, you probably heard that name, who's been jailed for tweets. We've had Peter Lynch, who was jailed for protesting just for holding a fairly innocent placard. And he eventually committed suicide in prison. So we've had multiple situations where free speech and the establishment has been cracking down on ordinary citizens. And this is probably the worst and the most climatic incident that's happened. And I hope it's going to be a line in the sand to actually say enough is enough. Now, the Met Police and Mark Rowley, they've blamed the government and said this is about your legislation. But really, the Met Police have been played by trans activists.
Yes.
And the reality is that this is about common sense. This is about legislation. This report was passed through multiple chains of command at multiple levels of the police force, and at every level they escalated to the extent that 5 armed police officers needed to meet Graham Linehan at Heathrow Airport to arrest him. I mean, this is absolutely insane, and this is the reason why Nigel Farage. And this is great timing because Nigel Farage was on his way to Washington to actually talk about free speech. And he put it to the American establishment and just to say this is a crisis, warning them and trying to humiliate and also put pressure on Keir Starmer to actually make the right decision. Now, he was wildly condemned as being unpatriotic and talking down Britain on the international stage. But I would say what's unpatriotic is to stand by in silence and watch as the fundamental principles that made your society are being undermined by government that, again, will not listen. listen. And Nigel Farage is being absolutely patriotic by getting out there and appealing to the likes of Donald Trump and JD Vance to actually stand up for us, because we feel like we've been held hostage by our own government.
But in the Myron, in the case of Graham Lynham, it's almost too late. Have a listen to him here. He's basically saying he can't live in Britain any longer. Have a listen.
If the police state and the police work for trans activists and left-wing lunatics like that, and they don't work for the people anymore. I met a nice policeman there, but they're isolated because the rest of the police force is just completely captured by gender ideology. So, yeah, I don't want to live here anymore because of that.
So, Myron, what hope for Britain if someone like Graham, who's one of the great comic talents, I mean, who will be next? Will it be John Cleese kicked out or whatever? I mean, this is really serious stuff. Do the majority of Brits understand how far this Orwellian censorship has gone?
I think up until this point, there was always some pushback from the left saying, oh, you're exaggerating, you're pushing it too far. No, it's just an isolated case here or there, or that was necessary. But this is one of those cases that universally, across the board, left and right, everybody has been scratching their heads trying to work out what's going on. And I think Mark Rowley, who's head of the Met Police, is actually embarrassed. He's been played and he's been weaponized by the trans activists. And I think it's now clear that what's happened in the police force, as well as the universities and the judiciary, is that, yes, they've been captured. There's been an over-academization, if you like, of the police force, where they see the university woke ideology as being more important than what's actually going on the ground. Understand, if my house got burgled last year, nobody came. I mean, 2 days later, somebody came and then looked around, gave me a number, but nothing phones, we're the phones are getting stolen all over the place in London, and we're the capital of that in Europe. And so all across the board, crime is soaring. Knife crime is soaring, shoplifting is soaring, but yet we have 5 armed police officers coming to Heathrow Airport for tweets. And when you weigh that up, you start to realise there is something absolutely rotten in our public institutions. And I think people are now, because of this specific case, are waking up to it.
Well, Myron, I always say where Britain goes 6 months later or so, so goes Australia as well. We've got all these Orwellian laws coming in later this year as well. But Myron, the mistake you made, next time you're burgled, just phone the police and say, there's a guy in a dress who's burglaring my house. And you'll have 5 police officers around straight away. Thanks. Always great to chat to you, Myron, and we'll speak again very soon.